welcome back to Code for Couples. Today we are talking wellness with Lisa Grenfell. And do not turn it off just because you think wellness is a dirty, dirty word. We are going to learn today how wellness is really a part of our lives and how is a huge part of our spouse's life and as our life as a couple. And I will tell you that I met Lisa because she contacted me over email to tell me how much she liked the podcast. But good gosh, girl, your email was like super full of enthusiasm. And I could not let you go because I was like, oh my gosh, you have so much good information here. I am so excited to have you on. And just after talking, I touched base with her right before the holidays, I guess it was, and we talked for, God gosh, like 45 minutes. So she has a ton of information to share, and that's why I wanted to bring her on. And I thought this was perfect right after my used to podcast, because it's that whole idea of I used to do something. So let me let Lisa introduce herself. She is a LEO wife. And that's how she got connected with me. But I'm going to let you go ahead, Lisa, go and introduce yourself just a little bit to us.
Hi, thank you for that introduction, Cindy. And I am so excited to be here. When I first emailed you, I actually asked my husband if I was crazy for doing this. And he kind of gave me that supportive, but yes, you kind of are crazy. But I am so happy and excited about this and talking with you today. So really, I'm an LEO wife. We are based in southeastern Wisconsin. And I've actually been in the employee wellness industry for about 5 years. And, it's a wonderful mix of worlds. My husband and I always laugh. We couldn't have more polar opposite jobs and professions, law enforcement, and then happiness, wellness, purpose.
Right.
But gosh, it makes a great pair. And really, too, I am a new mom to a 9-month-old baby girl.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Congratulations.
Life is crazy. Closing this year, it was just kind of a look back of all the firsts we had and craziness, but it's everything that we accept with open arms. But, I have to admit, it wouldn't be a formal introduction if I didn't introduce my Labradoodle, Walter, who's a big part of our lives as well. I'm a dog mom through and through. So it is.
God bless dog moms.
I know. They take a lot of love and care.
Yes, it's all good. Well, I know when we were talking on the phone, you talked a little bit about finding out information, trying to find information about what it was like to be a law enforcement spouse. And at one point in time, you kind of said, maybe this isn't for me, like this doesn't fit. What am I supposed to be doing? Would you mind sharing a little bit about that experience you had?
Of course. So, when my hubby joined the law enforcement field, I really reached out to resources, books, tried to reach out to the community that was local to us. And I work a standard 9 to 5 p.m. job. As I mentioned before, I am completely opposite in what I do when it comes to the stresses that we incur every day.
Yeah.
We were really excited about the family, the connectedness, all the positives that the law enforcement life brings you.
Yeah.
And that's something that we were expecting to kind of come to us. But then we realized, I think I need to actually create this. My hubby's department is a little bit more traditional, which there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of evolution in today's society, in work life, in wellness in itself, which we'll tap into. But gosh, when I was reading some of the books, I just felt like I was a little bit different compared to all the other significant spouses and significant others out there with their LEOs. And I mean, Cindy, there was one chapter, I think I was telling you about this. I was reading this poem, and this is, I think, when we were engaged. We weren't even married yet. And I was reading this book, and it was a poem about how it's okay, significant other or spouse, you may feel like your hubby's cheating on you, and that's just normal. And I stormed out of the bedroom. I think I threw the book across the room. like tears almost in my eye, like, this is not acceptable. Like, is this the culture? Is this, that's not allowed. And to me, it wasn't going to happen. It was my
Yeah.
non-negotiable. And of course, I married a wonderful man, and he was definitely on board, but I think he was a little deer in headlights going, oh my goodness, what is, what is happening here, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was just, it kind of sparked a little bit of a fire in me as to, okay,
This
what
is
is out
not going to be my relationship is kind of what I was
Thank
hearing,
you.
right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is not going to be our relationship. And this is just, why was this published, essentially? Why this is not supportive to families in the LEO life. So it's just not going to happen. And I support complete opposite. So that fueled a personal fire in me. And, going back to more of the traditional culture that our department has, my husband has been on third shift since he started. So I think we're in maybe the sixth year of third shift. It works for us. We call it our normal, but we really try to make a family within our shift and our unit. I know a lot of LEO spouses and law enforcement officers do themselves in their departments, but it's been just a wild ride gaining relationships and creating our own family and creating a community that may not have been there before. So it's a work in progress.
Always.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you're saying you're reading some of the material that is out there and kind of saying, hey, you know what, this might have been the normal, but this is not the normal anymore. At least it's not the normal for my relationship. And it's this is where it's like, oh, well, bless their hearts kind of a thing. That's what I would say, because it's like my poor husband, and like you're coming from this wellness industry, and my husband will even say, he'll say, I've learned to say things like, let me try that again, or because he's learned how to communicate differently because of what I do. And so, there's this positive spillover that can happen in our relationships. And I think that's what's going on in your relationship and with your department, is what you were kind of saying, is that you're trying to create a culture. And I want to get to that, a different culture within his department. And I want to get to that. But first, let's talk about wellness in general, because wellness, I know that any of my LEOs out there, or many of my first responders out there, are going to be going, oh my gosh, is this the kumbaya bullshit that HR is pushing down my throat? Because that's what I hear a lot of, at least in my world, is it's like, oh, they want us to do, some kind of well check. And that's wellness, or they want to, it doesn't necessarily work in their line of work when you think of wellness. And I know there's a little rivalry that goes on with our fire guys, or our fire department, and our PDs, because they're like, oh yeah, they get to sit around in their lounge chairs and cook meals. It's this
grocery
whole,
shop,
grocery shop. Yeah, guys, and the PD guys are driving through Dairy Queen, or Chicken Express here. I don't know where y'all drive through.
Right.
Drives through. So talk about wellness. You had a really good model that you wanted to share regarding wellness, where it's not just kumbaya and meditation.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so, the industry that I'm in has grown to be an $8 billion industry. I mean, worksite wellness, employee well-being. My organization individually has been around for 30 years. So there's been a lot of evolution with wellness in itself. Everyone thinks it's physical, it's nutritional, it's losing weight, right? A standard wellness program is dropping the pounds over the holidays, right? I mean, it's crazy to me. So, wellness has evolved. And I think what's really interesting about this is that wellness itself and worksite wellness has evolved over the years. But there hasn't been any formal stamp on what wellness is until the past couple years. And that, I think, has the national organizations who are truly formalizing what wellness and well-being is. I think now that that's happening is allowing a lot of employers and individuals to fully understand it and help remove that stigma that, worksite wellness isn't just the HRAs and biometric screenings that everyone dreads. So, one example given by the World Health Organization, and that is an agency, a part of the United Nations. It's based in Switzerland. They define wellness as a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So infirmity, like physical or mental weakness.
Yeah,
so that's just one example. The example that we're going to dive into today is really been marked by WellCOA, the Wellness Council of America. And WellCOA is our national affiliate. So I work with this definition every day.
Okay.
But what I like about it is it really breaks wellness down into 7 areas.
Yes.
And if you want, we can dive into them individually. Would you like me to do that?
So I really think that we need to dive into those individually, because when you're looking at the definition of wellness in this capacity, there are some really key components that I think, and you and I talked about, that I actually said, oh, wow, they're screwed if this is part of wellness, because they don't do this at all.
I know.
And I'll take, I mean, that's what it is.
Right.
But it's so important. And I'm not going to get you off track, but and I'll definitely throw in what I've also found in the mental health world as well. You know, they coincide. I can't talk. Right. They correlate.
Mm-hmm.
If people are mentally healthy, they're going to have some wellness in their life.
Right.
So yes, let's go through each of those components. So there's 7 components.
There are 7 components, and to focus on the word wellness as a whole, WellCOA defined it as the active pursuit to understand and fulfill your individual human needs. Now that is the Kickstarter to this long paragraph. And what I like about that is the phrase active pursuit, in the sense that our entire lives, we should be striving to achieve to be well.
Okay.
The final destination, we don't know what that looks like. The final destination may never happen, but the point is that you're always actively pursuing to be well. Okay. And so let's just focus on the first area here, health. And it's defined by WellCOA as beyond the absence of mental and physical illness, health is a feeling of strength and energy from your body and mind.
So so when you're talking about that definition of health, what would that look like in application?
An application. So, oh gosh, so what comes to my mind, right, naturally is all worksite wellness, but let's break it down individually for the listeners.
Yes, definitely.
And for our spouses. So we're trying to remove the stigma of wellness here. So health, breaking it down to application, what I want to focus on is the feeling of strength and energy from body and mind, right? So really, there's multiple ways we can always pursue this. Definitely, this is where the physical side of wellness comes in. This is the traditional viewpoint.
Right.
But also the component of mind. So there's various aspects here. I am going to throw in the fact that as individuals, we need to know our ability for self-care. Okay. When it comes to the physical side of our body, right? Self-care is to taking time every week or every day to take care of yourself, to fill your bucket, whether that's reflection, whether that's burning off stress and getting physical and working out, or getting outside and just moving, right? It doesn't need to be a hardcore workout, but just moving, recognition, your body's ability, and where it could be. Okay. But really, too, I want to focus on the fact that health, this could be aspects of learning. Are you challenging your mind?
Love that.
So, gosh, we can't be complacent, right? And complacency is where I kind of fit that word in with health when it comes to body and mind. Are we continuing to learn? We may be 10 years into our position. Are we expanding what we know for our spouses? Are we trying to learn more about each other's worlds, our work life, or just other personal interests that we have that, gosh, I mean, this could go on further.
Could the mind also, one of the struggles that people in first responder world have is that cynicism, right? The
Mm-hmm.
longer that we go along, the more cynical we can become based upon what we're seeing and what we encounter, based upon our lack of impact, based upon the fact that people will not get their heads out of their butts, so is that mind also my mindset? Is it the way that I view the world? Is it moving it from a narrow capacity to a greater, broader capacity, and seeing that this that I deal with every day isn't necessarily the world as a whole? So is that also part of the healthiness of the mind as well?
I think it fits there, but there's also three other areas where that cynicism and positivity would fit in.
Okay, so let's go on.
We're gonna jump actually right into that. I think that's a great segue, and a resiliency. So viewing life with optimism, feeling grateful and expressing appreciation, and feeling validated and encouraged. So right away, for a spouse, no hypervigilance. I mean, Dr. Martin and his book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement Officers, literally like flipped our marriage upside down, I would say. And being as a spouse, being that strong rock to not enable it, to recognize it, not enable it.
Yes.
But most importantly, and this is probably an area where I could personally grow in, is not get sucked in.
Mm-hmm.
Let them have their moments, but try to always be able to be that strong rock of, the world views it this way too. Same situation. There's optimism here. There's positivity here. There's lots of things to be grateful for, and just being each other's rocks for that. I mean, the law enforcement officers, they can do that too for us spouses.
Yes, and for each other.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I always think of resiliency as the ability to bounce back.
Yes.
And so when I think about hypervigilance or coming off shift, it's what does it take for them to bounce back? How quickly do they bounce back? Does there need to be a recovery period of time? Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, okay, and then after that, then what? And that's where I think as spouses, sometimes we can fall into that trap of, oh, well, I don't want to bother them, or they need more time, or, and yes, they do, but where's that gray area? Where's the part where it's like, okay, no, I get that you think everybody's an asshole, but, there are a lot of people. I'm not. So, there you go.
Well, and also too, I think individuals who can have some of the most significant impact in this area could be the leaders within the police department. So if you're a law enforcement officer listening here, you can be just this strong foundation of optimism and positive energy for your team. And even after, situations that you face within your shift, bring it back. Find some silver lining. There's always something. And just recognize that's what you guys are battling.
It's sometimes, how would you be clear? Because when you're talking about positivity, I think when I'm working with my first responders, most of them are like, well, I'm a realist. I'm like, well, yes, there's 6 ounces of water in this cup. It's how you view that 6 ounces. It's not a matter of that I don't believe there's only 6 ounces in the cup. It's how am I interpreting that 6 ounces? Am I saying, oh gosh, I'm going to really appreciate that 6 ounces I have, or am I going to complain that it's not enough?
Right.
So that's really what it is.
And you hit it spot on, Cindy, and especially too, just having gratitude every day. I mean, that if you are thinking about what you're grateful for, there's no room for cynicism.
Yeah. And I think that is a really key indicator, is the gratitude aspect, because they can have anybody, all of us can have gratitude for the little things. It's not just these big things in life. We can just have gratitude for, a smile on, your dog's face.
Right.
Since we're both dog moms. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Where do you want to go next?
I'm going to go back up to meaning.
Okay.
Right? We're kind of in this appreciation, positivity, gratefulness, so meaning. And really here what Wilco is focusing on is purpose, right? Feeling part of something bigger than yourself. This is where your spirituality can definitely come in. If you're a person who's not spiritual, that's okay. But just feeling that you are bigger than yourself. I mean, if you think about those words, it's so significant in someone's life. It gives you direction. It gives you a place of home when you maybe not be physically home.
Right.
Comfort. I mean, it's this knowing that your work matters, knowing that you matter, is just needed in everyone's lives. And I'm so happy that it's finally recognized as one of our components of what wellness is, because it's so far from physical and nutritional.
Yes, and I know for a fact that purpose in mental health is being shown as one of the key indicators as like an antidote to depression now. Because we're looking at, well, what's our purpose? And I don't mean like purpose in life. I mean, it could be that big if you want to, but it could be like, just what's your purpose for the day? What's your purpose for the week? It doesn't have to be a grandiose idea of like what you're going to do in life. I think part of the struggle with our first responders in this is that they sometimes don't feel like what they're doing is making a difference.
Yes.
And so their purpose gets challenged. And so sometimes we have to shift from purpose at work to purpose someplace else in our lives. And that's when you're talking about spirituality. I know for a fact, a lot of first responders that I work with stated that they went into this field because they felt it was a calling and they wanted to serve. And then they get in, and after 10 years, it's like, I feel like I've not made any difference in the world.
Right.
So sometimes that purpose has to be outside of work. And you're mentioning spirituality as well. Sometimes that purpose can be, cooking really good food, or sometimes that purpose can be making a difference in your family, or protecting your family if you can, those kinds of things. So
Well, so we work with a professor from the University of Michigan who completely and solely studies purpose.
Wow.
And meaning. His name is Vic Strecker. He has a couple books out, and it's something I highly recommend. So Vic Strecker categorizes meaning and purpose in two different buckets. Purposely, that you have a purpose within your community. You have a purpose with family, professionally, and then I think the other category is personally. It's been a year since I looked at these, but one thing that he notes is that your purpose will change throughout your lives. And I think there's just such a heavy pressure that everyone has one purpose, and that person, you find it early on and you're supposed to live it out your entire life. And that couldn't be further than the truth. And I love Vic Strecker's books because he provides the science behind purpose. He provides a connection to how your body changes, your decision-making changes when you have a clear purpose. And he walks you through what this could be. And I think what's also important here is everybody needs to have a purpose outside of work. And you touch base on that it could be, but I also think there should be a purpose outside of work, because when you're mixing hypervigilance in, I know Dr. Gil Martin touches bases on this, that's when you get to the used tos, right? That's when you start phasing out everything that you love in life, and you become so detached that your life just kind of becomes blah, right? It's so having a mission outside that you can get excited about, that you can share with others. This doesn't have to be spirituality. This will change and evolve over time. And as long as you as spouses talk about it and recognize that you guys may have very different purposes at one time, that's okay. The important thing is that you support each other during it. And I think when we translate this to the work site, one thing that's been really changing in employers is that employers are supporting and encouraging their employees to have purpose outside of work. that
Really?
they are
Okay.
recognizing that we want you to help succeed outside after 5 p.m. or after your shift ends. What are you interested in? What are you doing? Can we provide you resources and tools to help? And I just think that is it's a futuristic move, yes, definitely. But I think even just having the conversation from leaders and from support saying that we want to send you home better than you came. We recognize there's a life outside of work. Let us help you. That
Wow.
conversation should be happening within the work sites, and it should be happening at home.
Wow. That is quite surprising to me, because a lot of times I know employers are saying, well, anything that you do, you need to get approved by me first.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like there's still a transition happening, but that's
Right.
exciting to know that that's coming.
Yeah, it is.
Very cool.
There's a lot going on with meaning and purpose, even from mission and visions being changed for organizations to really focus on what is the leadership's purpose, what's the organization's purpose, what is it for our employees' well-being, and what is it for who we serve. I've seen a lot of departments actually focusing on this first and foremost, which I think is really smart.
Yes. Yes. Well, and it definitely then dictates the way people police.
Mm-hmm.
Or where they serve the public, I should say, probably.
Exactly.
Very cool.
Exactly.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
So the next one is one that my husband completely laughed at, and I remember you laughing at this too. So the next component of wellness is safety. So knowing, right? So standard employees, right, we're thinking that we want them to know that they're safe from physical and psychological harm at work. So we can laugh at that.
Yes, and that's where I did laugh. I was like, because that happens.
Right. So, but there's components of this area that they dive deeper in, and they talk about feeling safe to take calculated risks.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, and I know you'll appreciate this because you're a Brené Brown fan, the feeling of being able to show vulnerability.
Right.
And with spouses, I think that one, the feeling of safety within your home is definitely a non-negotiable. I know you talked about that in one of your podcasts, and Cindy, oh my gosh, it just, so the story is that we live in a very safe neighborhood, as I perceive it, right? My husband perceives it not to be. No, we're safe. But this wonderful neighborhood, if I'm at home and I'm distracted, I'm doing 10 things at once, sometimes the back door will be unlocked. And I don't know why, but it took the word of non-negotiable for me to click of, oh, this door has to always be locked. Everything always needs to be locked. And that's something you know, but when you can mix the word non-negotiable, understanding that's his way of, if I always know this is locked, my family's safe, my house is safe, I can relax a little. It just reframed it for me. And so when we talk about safety and well-being and wellness and thinking about couples who have law enforcement officers within the relationship, just understand that your home is probably the safe haven that they crave, right?
Yes,
and need.
Absolutely.
And discuss what are the non-negotiables when it comes to safety. Know the OODA loop. I'm going to throw in hypervigilance again. Just if you're in, we just love that. When you're in public places, I can just look at my hubby and say, is this stressing you out? Is this it's not happening for you today? That's fine. So this is just really the ability to be vulnerable, maybe in the workplace, maybe if we shift the stigma of vulnerability in the workplace and be able to talk about what we're talking about here, right?
Yes.
At work.
Yes.
But then for spouses, really just understand when they're not at work, what does safety mean to them? What does safety mean to you?
Yes.
And what can you do to enhance that?
That's awesome. Yeah, and you hit like every nail on the head on that one, because what I was thinking is that safety is going to look different for our first responders than it is going to look for I'm going to say the public a lot of times, because the veil is lifted. And so they have a different view, and we have to respect, as a spouse, we have to respect they have a different view.
Right.
Weirdly, I mean, as a mental health professional, I have a very different view as well, because I pick up on mental health stuff from other people. I'm like,
Yes.
something's weird over there, something's going on. But it's still that safety. And I love that you hit emotional safety as well. And that's a challenge at work, but also sometimes at home. And it's not just our job to make them feel emotionally safe. I want to spin that around too. Like, it's their job to make us feel emotionally safe. So, just because, this is where it's that balance between being a spouse and being the first responder, that it's also, I need to feel safe. I need to feel that I can approach you and say something without walking on eggshells. Right. As well, which is what happens a lot of times. Like, I'm feeling a little moody as a first responder. I'm a little tired, and I give you time to recover, and I approach you as a spouse and you still bite my head off. That's not okay.
Right.
So there's some conversation that has to be held around, how do we make each other feel safe in this relationship, and how do we need to feel safe outside in our own different worlds?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
I love that. So the next one is one of my favorites. It's connection. It's experiencing positive, trusting relationships with others, feeling a sense of belonging, acceptance, and support. So, I mean, human connection, right? This is a need, human touch. I loved your podcast on reconnecting. I was just going, yes, 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 the whole time. But if I was going to really hone in on connection within a law enforcement relationship, I would really say that one of the most important things you could do is build relationships in and outside of work with individuals who are in law enforcement, with individuals who are outside of law enforcement. But then additionally to that, for those individuals who are close in your circle, if there's opportunities to educate them on the lives you live, that helps. But one thing I'm learning is that you can never expect people to fully understand. So there's a fine balance there. But these relationships, I think, are just what root us into who we are. It brings us back centered. The feeling of acceptance. I think this is so interconnected into every aspect of wellness, with meaning, achievement. It's in every aspect here. If I was going to look at connection in the workplace, I would definitely look at just, the team structure, the team personalities. And if you are wondering how you could enhance that, have the discussions of, talking about strengths within each other.
Okay.
And so strength identification, but creating that safe, right? All this is interconnected.
Yes.
So creating that safe space so you can build those connections with your team and your leaders. Perfect.
And, one of the things that you said there was, connecting with others outside of law enforcement. I know that's really difficult because of shifts, because of not understanding their world, but it is so imperative. And this is another one that when we were going over this initially, I kind of laughed at and I said, oh, they're screwed here too.
Yeah.
But it's important, and part of what I go to is we're tribal people. We as humans, we're tribal, and so we need to be able to connect with other people and have interaction.
Yes, we are. And you know what's interesting when you said that about the shift work and that it's hard. One of the best things that we found when it comes to keeping those relationships is you make plans in advance and you keep them. No matter how hard, no matter how tired you are, no matter how much laundry you have to do, just always pick people before everything else.
Yes.
And we've never regretted it. So
good deal. Okay. So let me go over them so far. So far we have health, we have resiliency, we have meaning, we have safety, we have connection, and then we have two other ones, right?
Correct. Yes.
So
and
what's
the next one is achievement, and the one after that is growth. And so I may kind of combine these because they're so interconnected with achievement and growth. And I also feel like achievement and growth can be significantly enhanced within the workplace. I think the 5 that we first discussed, spouses and significant others, can have significant impact on.
Okay.
But when it comes to achievement and growth, we can definitely support them, and knowing, asking, having the conversations, what are your goals? How can we get there? How can I support you in getting there? And sometimes that may mean that they are taking extra shifts, that they're joining a task force, and that may seem like a negative effect on you and your family immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But if this is something that helps them achieve their dreams and goals, and I just think there's so many benefits in the end that it's important, right? And all of us want to feel like we're achieving, and we have opportunities for growth, and we have the resources. And that's what's important here, is that we need to create the feeling that there is support, there are resources, there are freedom and autonomy to achieve your goals, and that you're progressing in life. And to flip that, right, spouses and significant others, it's not just our job to help LEOs with their growth and achievement. In turn, that may mean that you have to stay at home while one of us is at a work function, or vice versa. So those are the last 2 of wellness and well-being.
Very good. Okay. Sorry. So what I was thinking of when you were talking about that is just the flip side, where somebody has to maybe stay home. And I would even stretch and say some of this is combined. Like when I think of when I went out into private practice, that was not safe for my husband, in the sense of he's like, what do you mean you're not going to have a paycheck coming in and health benefits? Like that really impacted his safety as well. But it gave me meaning, right? And it was something that was making me feel more safe. I was connecting with other private practitioners, and like it just fell into place. And so that idea of achievement goes on both sides. Yes, that it's sometimes a big sacrifice to let somebody to fulfill that purpose, whether that's in the workplace or outside of the workplace, and to have that achievement and growth that they need to do that. Very good.
Definitely.
So it all kind of ties together. So let me go over them one more time. They are health, resiliency, meaning, safety, connection, achievement, and growth. And those are the 7 components of the WellCoA definition of wellness. Now, you had also talked about how you had a stealthy way of implementing some of this, because we've talked about, one of the things that you and I talked about that you haven't talked about yet is the frog.
Yes, the frog. The frog is a wonderful fable that we use a lot in the employee wellness industry. So what the boiling frog effect, or the boiling frog fable is that, if you put a frog in boiling hot water, its natural reaction is to recognize the danger, recognize that it needs to get out, and it's going to try and jump out of the pot, right?
Right.
If you put a boiling frog in lukewarm, tepid water, it's going to enjoy its hot bath, and it's just going to relax and not even question where it is. And if we slowly turn up the heat on that water, we just keep slowly boiling it a little hotter and a little hotter, what's going to happen is that the frog is going to die. And that's a very dramatic ending to this fable, but that
but it's true.
It's true. And that's how you cook a frog. So if we translate our law enforcement officers, and even ourselves, I mean, this is for everybody. This isn't just for LEOs.
Right.
But here is the conversation took place at one of our third shift breakfasts. And this is something that I just kept planning, and I keep planning over and over, that brunch works for all the families. We invite everybody. We have brunch together, and we were talking about responding to crises at work with our LEOs. And we were talking about like what kind of scares us most about this profession. And I mentioned, well, for me, it's actually not the individual crises, it's the boiling the frog effect, that every day as humans we have stresses in our lives, and we have a choice to recognize them, talk about them, respond to them. But where we really can get into dangerous waters is when we just get complacent and when we aren't intentional with how we live. And that is what I get most nervous about personally when it comes to my LEO, just because it's rooted in what I do in a profession. And I just think it's such a strong analogy that, it's not individual crisis that's going to affect us. It's going to be 40 years down the road. We ask ourselves, hey, what do you love to do? Oh, you love to fish. When was the last time you've done that? Well, 40 years ago.
Right.
And that is just one example that takes place in everyone's lives, whether you're a law enforcement officer or not. And this is the pursuit of well-being. This is the pursuit of fulfilling your individual needs. And what I think is so interesting is, Cindy, when you talked about, let's discuss how this relates to spouses and individuals, I really sat back and thought about our industry with employee wellness, and that we always say that culture is designed, right? You can design your culture, but culture is always there. If you're not designing your culture, it's created by default.
Yes.
It's there, no matter.
Oh yeah, culture's there no matter what.
So you're either designing it. Yeah, you're either designing it or it's created by default. And that's our lives individually as well. We are either living with intention, and we're either living with the intention to fulfill our individual human needs and support each other through this active pursuit of wellness, or it's just happening and it's going by.
Yes.
So mix that with the boiling frog, mix this with your work life, your family life, your home life, and these 7 areas. There are so many ways that every day you can just do small little things to even just create the conversation and recognize this.
So what are some of the ways, now you mentioned the brunch, what are some of the other small little ways that you're thinking about or talking of that we can do?
I should really step back and just put a disclaimer out there that there was about 2 years of me just having these feelings of like something's missing. And I'd never really
just
put
2 years.
I know. I was like, just something's missing. Can I do this? Am I the person? And then, can I create change? Is this my place? Am I going to be welcome because I'm polar opposite personality of maybe a stereotypical law enforcement officer? And so it's still a work in progress, but just one of my personal goals is to create a community where there isn't one, and to really arm the law enforcement officers with the tools and resources to understand wellness and how they can make an impact at work. So it really just started on, well, we first need to get to know the people around us. And the best way for me to realize that was breakfast and creating those conversations. My poor hubby is always stuck with these life questions. He probably gets them daily, Cindy. Just, have you thought about your purpose lately? Or, what do you enjoy outside of life? And do you have, what are your goals for this year? Are you feeling connected? Or tell me about your hypervigilance. Are you in the, so many questions.
Right.
But I think just having those conversations, we're nowhere near perfect, but we are recognizing it, and we're trying to make decisions intentionally, knowing that these impact us as humans.
So part of it's just bringing it up in conversation.
Just
having, so for us as spouses, either side, right? It's about, hey, what are you feeling is your purpose? Where are you right now? How are you dealing with meaning, or how are you dealing with your safety issues? Do you feel like you're growing?
Exactly.
So some of it's, that can be really good open-ended conversation to
Mm-hmm.
have on both ends. So if
Yes.
even if my hubby doesn't know what exactly he's asking, but kind of, he might
Yeah.
say, so what do you feel like your purpose is lately? And I might be like, "Ooh, you're asking me about my purpose. Okay."
Right.
And he gets to score all kinds of points because he asked me. But
Right.
it's kind of opening up and being willing to have those difficult, and I don't say they're difficult, but just being willing to have those conversations and not shutting them down. Because
Right.
sometimes I know on the opposite end, it's like, oh my gosh, what do you want to know? Why these big questions? But it's
Mm-hmm.
really keeping that door open.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a stealthy way that you've
Right.
integrated the wellness as well
Right.
as, having brunch and opening up conversation at the PD.
And
Okay.
even I will make this, I will be honest, I bring donuts to the PD randomly.
Hey.
I try to get involved and meet all the families and his fellow coworkers. I can always be doing a better job with it. But one thing is, I hope someday, there's these departments that you hear that they plan family events where they create the safety by only having PD family available. Everything else is
Yes.
shut down, locked down. And I think that is one of the smartest things that you can do as the department is you're creating this opportunity to connect the families, but you're also creating a feeling of safety and you're just connecting as human beings. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope someday that we have that as a department, but until then, if I can get involved and I can help, or it's bringing, baby girl to the department with a box of dozen donuts, I don't care that it's donuts. What I
Right.
care is that our baby girl gets to see her daddy at work, and that she also gets to meet his fellow coworkers, and that they're meeting us too, and
Right.
that's important. And that's not very strategic. I mean, let's be real. I'm bringing food to a department. That's not very strategic, but it is an intentional decision that we make to just
Mm-hmm.
try to connect and try to create these relationships so that maybe we can grow further from there. So it's just simple things at this moment, but I have some big ideas in mind, but maybe that will be for another podcast.
Maybe. So one of the things that I hear too, let me back up. I want to make sure that what we're communicating too is that wellness is not, once again, it's not the kumbaya. We don't need to have a softer, kinder, gentler police force.
Right.
That's
No.
not what this is incorporating. This is
No.
really about, hey, meeting each other where they're at, having
Yeah.
conversation, and having some wholeness
Right.
about lives. And I'm really trying to emphasize that I know that it needs to go up the chain of the command. I know it can be
Right.
bottom up or top down, but I
Mm-hmm.
know top down would be best, but bottom up works just fine too.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's something that you as a first responder feel strongly about, start having these conversations within your department.
Right.
Take the initiative to have some of these gatherings to start to form a community.
Right.
Take the initiative to talk about where do other people want to grow? Do they
Mm-hmm.
feel safe? Do you feel safe within the department? Sometimes those are
Right.
conversations that need to be had too.
Right.
Whether that's with administration or whether that's you're concerned about somebody else's skills in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
talk about if you're not feeling safe at home. Is there something going on? But that has to come from community and being able to trust other people in a community. So keep in mind that this doesn't have to be an administration thing that has to come down. You can
Right.
start this for wherever you are, whether you're a spouse and you want to start integrating it, or whether you're a law enforcement or a fire paramedic, first responder, where
Mm-hmm.
you want to start integrating it for yourself and start forming connections with other people at work and at home.
Right.
So
You couldn't have said it better, Cindy, especially because in my line of work, we support over 500 organizations throughout the state of Wisconsin. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that first responders are untouchable when it comes to worksite wellness. No one knows how to reach them. And, as a wife, a spouse, I'm thinking, well, duh. What you're doing from this city administration office is nowhere near what they need, want, are interested in, and there's just no capacity to do that.
Right.
So to encourage any law enforcement officer just to start destigmatizing what wellness is and having those conversations is the first step. And there's significant movement here that we're creating and witnessing in Wisconsin, that law enforcement departments and first responders are taking the ownership of their employee wellness into their own hands. They are the ones that understand their population. They are the ones that understand the need. And it's recognition that we may have perceived that we didn't have the capacity before to spend time and money on this, but it's now a necessity. Because you had a very interesting fact you shared last time, that more law enforcement officers die by suicide than actual die by gunfire. And that's just something that we need to put out there more and recognize that it's our jobs to, change this and change how we work. And wellness, a lot of times in organizations, especially in first responders that I'm seeing, it's not recognized as wellness. Wellness that we're talking about today can fit into organizational development. It can fit into change processes. It fits into high-performing employees, right? If it's important to create high-performing employees, think about everything we talked about today.
Right.
Leadership.
And if they're happy, they're going to be better at work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So all of this is so interconnected, and
when you're talking about that they're untouchable, really where it has to get plugged in, when you're talking about we have to make this a priority due to the impact of the field, the we, and I'm using air quotes here, the we is the blue family or the red family, or it's the first responder family. It has to come from within the organization itself. It has to come from within there, because anything that gets pushed down is not going to fly. So.
No, it is not. And there's so many reasons why, but we won't get into a wormhole of that.
Well, Lisa, is there anything else that you want to throw in before we end?
No, I appreciate you having me on today, Cindy. I loved our conversation. And, if we can just start having conversations about what wellness is, that's just a really great step for everybody.
This is great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you reached out to me in an email, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this girl has so much information. And I will probably put something up in a blog post that corresponds with this, so everybody can tap into these elements of wellness and maybe even throw up some questions that you can integrate into your relationship, whether you're on either side of the fence there in the relationship. Lisa, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you. This was wonderful, Cindy.